We've got a big show this morning talking about little things. What's it all about? You'll find out coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Garden City office of Santee Cooper. We're focused on the Children's Miracle Network celebration, which was held this past weekend. And we're visiting with the Executive Director of the McLeod Health Foundation, Jill Bramblett. Good morning, Jill.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Big celebration this weekend. Congratulations.
It was fabulous.
The tremendous numbers, and of course the weather held, and even if it didn't, it was going to be a big celebration anyway.
It was, and it's such a wonderful time because we're doing so much for the children throughout this entire region, so it really is all worthwhile.
Oh yeah, and all year round you all have been raising funds that really, I guess, culminated this past weekend.
That's right. It all comes together this weekend to really make a difference for our kids.
You had a big goal to try to overcome from last year with $860-some thousand that were raised last year.
That's right.
You still feel good. I guess you'll still have some dollars that'll trickle in over the next month or so, or did everything have to stop this past week?
No, we'll still get some trickling in, and you know, anybody who wants to make a gift, we will always welcome it.
Great, good, absolutely. Well, a lot to talk about with the Children's Miracle Network, and of course McLeod Health and the foundation of which you've been the executive director for the last almost 5 years.
That's right.
A lot happening in the PD area that serves a lot more folks than just in the PD area.
Right, more than 50% of the patients that we serve come from outside the Florence area.
Is that right?
Yeah, because we serve a 12-county region all the way through Horry County, all in northeastern South Carolina, and then also in southeastern North Carolina.
Is that right?
Yeah,
so Robinson, Scotland, Columbus counties, that's...
I don't know if we go as far as Columbus, but we do Robinson and Scotland.
Okay, good. Well, that's perfect, right down I-95 for them to be able to get a quick shot down to y'all.
Yeah, and we do see a lot of people from I-95 that have been in accidents, you know, that are traveling because we're right there.
Jill, how long have you been at McLeod, actually?
I have been there for really 15 and a half years.
Okay, good.
I started working in the Children's Hospital as a volunteer coordinator, so it's really near and dear to my heart, and had, at the time, 3 young children when I started working there who have now made me feel a little bit older. But I found out firsthand why it's so important to have a children's hospital right there in a community.
So you've answered it that the Children's Hospital is at least older than 15 years old. How long has McLeod had a children's hospital?
It's been since about 1980 that we have a children's hospital. And we are a hospital within a hospital. We have a children's hospital floor that has all the services of a children's hospital. So we are not a freestanding building, but we are an entire floor and some more that's designated to the care of children.
Of course, we've heard a lot recently. Joe Fisher and a lot of the volunteers with the PD division of the March of Dimes have been on the show and highlighting the neonatal intensive care unit at McLeod. Just a couple weeks ago, I think one of the folks you had out recently, Chris and Riley Saffles, were with us, and of course his daughter Riley, who is a beneficiary of the tremendous expertise you all have at McLeod.
Yeah, it truly is amazing when you walk into the neonatal intensive care unit and you see a baby there that weighs a pound. I mean, that's like, if you think about a Beanie Baby, the size of a Beanie Baby, I mean, it's that small, or a 16-ounce can of Coke. I mean, they're so small, you literally can't touch them because their skin is so fragile it can just tear the skin. So it's amazing when you go in there that these babies that are born, you know, at 22, 23 weeks, so many of them are able to survive and do well.
Jill, do you get by there often? Do you actually go in there? Is that a reminder on a regular basis, or I'm sure you must take the time to do that? I do. I was just in there the other day. We always like to go in there and thank the staff for all that they do. We have a tremendous staff, and it's extremely expensive to run that unit. Oh, yeah.
We have one staff person, one nurse for every 2 babies.
Is that right? One nurse for every 2 babies. And you've got 40 beds in the neonatal intensive care unit. Wow.
And then possibly sometimes one nurse for every 1 baby, just depending on how critical they are.
The severity of the condition there.
And then like one of our miracle children that you saw this past weekend, John Sobieski, he actually is from Myrtle Beach, and his mother had a syndrome called HELLPS, H-E-L-P-P-S, I believe is how you spell it. No, it's H-E-L-L-P-S. and all of her organs were shutting down. And so her liver was failing, her blood pressure was so high that they were afraid she was going to have a stroke. So the only way to save the mother's life, even though the baby was still doing well, is to take the baby. So John was born at 27 weeks, only weighing like 1 pound and 15 ounces. When he got there, we had just purchased a new piece of equipment from funds that we had raised through Children's Miracle Network called a jet ventilator. A jet ventilator helps the child breathe in that situation. It breathes for him 400 times a minute. You and
400 times a minute, wow.
You and I only breathe 20 times a minute. So you can imagine how important that piece of equipment was. And so John needed that piece of equipment. He was the first baby to utilize it, and it really helped save his life.
And children or a child in the womb at 27 weeks is breathing that many times a minute, or is
well, at that point, usually they're not. You know, they're not using their lungs
yet.
Right.
So they really need that kind of constant feeding of air to survive.
Right. They'll be on the ventilator for a while until they can start breathing on their own. Not to mention all the other complications that these babies at such a young age can have.
You said you joined McLeod, and it was at 91 as the volunteer coordinator for the Children's Hospital.
That's right.
That's tremendous. So had you grown up thinking you always wanted to work with children or be a volunteer coordinator?
No, actually, I used to be in retail.
Oh, really?
Many years ago when we lived in Atlanta. So, but I had majored in a major that was doing therapeutic recreation. So then I got involved with the Children's Hospital. So I was able actually to work with the children and their family, and also help provide volunteers. We have an enormous playroom, if you will. It's called a Child Life Activity Center in the Children's Hospital, and we bring children when they're able to get out of their rooms down there for activities. They know it's a safe place. No doctor or nurse is allowed to go in there and do any kind of procedure.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and then when they get down there, they don't want to go home.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
So, and that's where we broadcast live from this past weekend. We were in the Child Life Activity Center.
A lot of viewers of WBTW on TV 13, and of course that's when all TV stations really wrap around the experience of trying to highlight the success of a big fundraiser like you all are doing year-round, Children's Miracle Network. And of course you were also at Dead Dog Saloon out in front of Coastal Grand Mall.
We were. They were wonderful to us. We were there last year and this year, and it's just wonderful to be there in that setting. And Charlie does a wonderful job of helping to support us.
Oh, he does, absolutely. Are you a PD area native, Jill?
Actually, no. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay, so you're a Palmetto State native, yeah.
But I've been there for about 18 years. So
golly, good.
It's home now.
That's right. And do you still have family in the area?
In Columbia, I do, but I have 2 boys that went to the University of South Carolina, and one has graduated and lives in Charlotte now, who's a civil engineer, and one that's having a really good time at Carolina right now. And then I still have one at home.
Great, good. So still keeping your hand in the, still staying active probably with, so 3 boys.
No, 1 girl. The one at home is a girl.
Right, the one at home is a girl.
Yeah.
When we think about the Children's Miracle Network, has it been around a long time? Yeah,
it's been around. This is the 25th anniversary for Children's Miracle Network, and I don't know that everybody understands what Children's Miracle Network is. So it's a national organization that originally was started by the Osmonds. You know, Marie Osmond is still very, very involved, along with John Schneider.
Right.
And they support more than 170 children's hospitals throughout the United States and Canada.
170?
Yeah, 170. McLeod Children's Hospital is the Children's Miracle Network hospital in this region. There are also 3 other Children's Miracle Network hospitals in the state of South Carolina, one being in Charleston, MUSC, Palmetto Richland in Columbia, and the Greenville Hospital System in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
So those are the 4 anchor children's hospitals in the state, and they are all Children's Miracle Network hospitals. So there are sponsors that participate with Children's Miracle Network. Walmart, Food Lion, Eckerd's, the list goes on. And all the funds raised by those sponsors in our region stay local to support the local children's hospital.
Is that right? They all stay local?
Yeah.
That's tremendous.
100% of every dollar that's raised stays right here to help the children at McLeod Children's Hospital. And then 100% of every dollar goes directly to the children's hospital. There's no administrative costs. Nothing comes out of that money. It's 100% gift to the children's hospital.
There's no administrative cost. You mean because the person that would help facilitate those dollars is actually an employee almost always, I guess, or always, of the member hospital? Yeah,
so every dollar that comes in comes straight to us, and we turn around and give every single dollar to the children's hospital.
That is tremendous.
Yeah, so it truly has helped us so much over the years.
Yes, absolutely. And how did you all go about raising funds for the Children's Hospital prior to the Children's Miracle Network?
It's just grassroots fundraising, building relationships. I truly feel like people give to people. They have to believe in your cause, but you have to make them understand your cause. And to me, there's no better cause than helping children. I truly think it just pulls at everybody's heartstrings. I know it did at mine. And I had a child who ended up in the Children's Hospital when I was working up there. He started having neck pains, and of course I'm saying, no, I'm just overreacting. I see things in the Children's Hospital, so there's nothing wrong. But we ended up taking him to the emergency room, and he had meningitis.
He had meningitis.
Yeah. Luckily, after 3 days, we found out it was viral and not bacterial. But it was a scary time for me, and thank God the Children's Hospital was there.
Yeah.
You know, because they really made him so much more comfortable, made me so much comfortable, and they know how to treat children, and that's so important.
Jill, absolutely. Speaking of that, you've got one of the posters from, which I guess really helped culminate in the celebration from this weekend.
That's
Can
right.
you share with viewers a little bit about each of the 5 children here? Of course, you mentioned John Sobieski there at the bottom right here. Who are some of the other children, and why are the reasons they were miracle children?
Well, really this is very regional. John was from Myrtle Beach, which we just talked about.
Right.
This is Andrew, and this is Eddie Ramsey. This is a really neat story because these 2 boys have what you call brittle bone disease, meaning that they could just move suddenly any way and it breaks their bones. It's a very, very painful illness to have. Eddie actually is from the Ukraine. And Andrew is from Florence. Eddie was adopted from the Ukraine when he was 2 and brought over, and these 2 boys have formed a bond because you don't see a lot of children with this disease.
Right.
And so they have gotten to know each other. They had done some treatments actually in Canada, and they've been served for a long time by our Children's Hospital. This is Elizabeth. She's actually from Timmonsville, South Carolina, and she was in a terrible accident with her brother where she had severe head trauma and internal injuries.
A car accident.
Car accident, right, on her way to school. And so she was in an infantile state. She was in a coma. It took her 5 months of hospitalization and rehabilitation to recover. And she's still going through rehab today, but she's doing fabulous, as everybody could see this week, and she's a wonderful little girl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then this is Levon. Levon is from Hemingway, South Carolina, and he actually was involved in a very tragic automobile accident where his mother was killed, as well as his uncle. And he sustained severe broken bones throughout his body and really just crushed his face, and his face had to be rebuilt. And the funniest thing that the doctors have told us was that they promised him once they took the wires off of his face when he was wired, he wanted a hamburger so bad, so they promised to give him a hamburger. And so as soon as he was able to eat, they gave him that hamburger, and I mean, it was probably the best hamburger he's ever had in his entire life.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. 5 amazing children. Of course, there's so many other children that are impacted and supported by the Children's Miracle Network and what it does to raise funds to support children's hospitals.
That's correct. That it really is. We have so many children, and these are just representation of all the children. But they're truly all miracles, and we're just blessed to have such a generous community.
That is, and of course, a lot of folks were watching from 2 to 10 p.m., 2 p.m. on this past Saturday.
Till midnight, yeah.
On WBTW and watching for that full 10 hours. A lot of folks, I'm sure, were tuned in.
Yeah,
almost that entire time.
Yeah.
Of course, y'all were broadcasting from McLeod and from Dead Dog. Of these 5 children, were they located at the 2 locations, or spread out, or were they all with you in Florence?
They all came to Florence because they like to come back and see the doctors and the nurses and the staff that cared for them. So, but we did have. I don't know if you know little Parker Davis. He's a miracle child from a couple of years ago that's from Myrtle Beach. His mother is a firefighter and her father is a police officer.
I didn't know that.
And they didn't know their local heroes, and they didn't know they were going to need the heroes at the hospital when she went into premature labor. But anyway, he's like 5 or 6 now, and just the cutest thing you've ever seen. Very rambunctious, all boy.
Parker Davis, all boy.
All
Listen
boy.
To you. Sounds like a mama.
Yeah, but he was at Dead Dog for an interview, and then he came to the hospital. They drove to Florence after they did that interview here because they still wanted to be back with all the festivities.
That's great. I bet.